This is Michael Popok. You're on Legal AF MTN, and I'm at the intersection. We got great news as a warning against all election deniers and MAGA who are working as election supervisors or on boards of election. If they think they're going to try to stop the certification of the 2024 election as a protest vote or to help MAGA or Donald Trump in his lawsuits that will be inevitably filed, think again. We've got a new report that Chris Mays, the Arizona Attorney General, has successfully obtained a guilty plea against Peggy Judd. Peggy Judd was the supervisor of the Cochise County Board of Elections. And in 2022, I'm not even doing reporting here on 2020. In 2022, she admitted to the New York Times that as a protest about what she saw as fraud in the election in Maricopa County in 2020, she was going to refuse to certify the results of the midterm elections, which almost backfired because by missing the deadline, they almost jeopardized the Republican votes in that county from being counted at the midterm. So now we've got her she was charged by the Attorney General, Chris Mays, who you may recall, or I'll tell you straight here, is also has indicted a series of people, the fake electors in the 2020 election, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, Ken Chesbro, other people, all indicted by Chris Mays. Donald Trump, an unindicted co-conspirator for a good reason, because Chris Mays doesn't need to deal with immunity issues. So he can just go after everybody else. Peggy Judd was indicted along with one of her colleagues for a felony charge of refusing to certify and against the public trust. She pled guilty to a misdemeanor in which she's going to get 90 days of probation. And look at this, she is going to be able to keep her seat on the Cochise County Board. She's just not the supervisor anymore. But what I like about this is according to some recent reporting, there's more than 35 election supervisors and members of boards of election that have already, from 2020 till now, try to gum up the works, try to throw sand in the gears, try to not do their job and certify the election or they're part of it. And they've done it as a protest, a delay tactic, as a punishment to the Democrats, to the American voter. In the case of Peggy Judd and her colleague, they made false claims that the vote tabulators, the human tabulators, were not properly trained or qualified. Now, Cochise County has been the home of a series of conspiracy theories. There doesn't seem to be a conspiracy theory they haven't adopted as their own and taken to their bosom in Cochise County. They said, we're back to where we were before. Oh, they even dug in and pulled out all the ballots. Oh, this doesn't sound like there'll be any problem with this. And tried to physically hand count all the ballots because they didn't trust the tabulators. I don't know what is in the water in Cochise County, and my apologies there. Fortunately, Maricopa County indicted Peggy Judd. She just barely missed the felony. Now, if she'd gotten nailed and had pled guilty or was convicted by a jury of a felony, she would have, of course, been taken off the rolls of voters, ironies of all ironies, and she would have lost her seat on the county board. Now, I wasn't inside the tent with all of the thinking that Chris Mays, as the Attorney General, has used, but we always trust her instinct. She's a very fine lawyer, very fine Attorney General. So if she thought she needed to take the misdemeanor, there must have been something about the case that led her to believe that. Now, she did get a little bit of a pound of flesh from Peggy Judd because another judge in a related lawsuit awarded the Attorney General over $36,000 that Peggy Judd has to pay them for going after them in the case, where they had to try to have a judge through a mandamus action compel the certification. So basically, they had to go to court as the Attorney General. They had to lop off the head of the board supervisor, which was Peggy Judd and her deputy, and they had to get a judge to compel, through a mandamus order, force the rest of the board to make the count. And that costs money. I don't know, $36,000 apparently in Arizona. Seems pretty cheap. But the judge agreed that Peggy Judd, as part of restitution, should pay that. So she gets a misdemeanor, 90 days probation, Class B or Class 3 misdemeanor. She's got to pay the $36,000. She gets to stay on the board, but not as the supervisor. And the question is, will this be enough to stop the other MAGA, not just the 35 we already know have tried to refuse to certify, but others, and gum up the works in November. Now, look, there are dozens of lawsuits filed in each of the battleground states already by Republican operatives. They didn't wait until after the election like last time. They've already filed the lawsuits. And judges have been working overtime, many of them, to repel these attacks on the judiciary. Some of them have been successful, as we've reported on Legal AF in Georgia. The state election board got MAGA controlled overnight in September, tried to pass 7 rules in Georgia to try to tip the scales in favor of Donald Trump and to steal the election from Kamala Harris, and more importantly, the American people, to make the voting not fair and square. And not one but 2 Georgia judges decided that that's not okay. And they decided to strike down those rules as being illegal and unconstitutional. But there's another 6 or 8 cases in Georgia alone, let alone the other 6 battleground states. And so there's a sleeper cell of crazy MAGA that's waiting to be activated by Donald Trump and his minions to refuse to certify, to try to adopt or use rules past the last minute, to try to delay the process. Why? To give Donald Trump and his lawyers time to move these cases forward, file new cases, file motions for temporary restraining order, emergency applications, and the like. That's all we're watching. For example, in Georgia, the state election board gave the power to any one member of a county election board, meaning even if MAGA was outnumbered, the minority could throw sand in the gears of certification and a vote counting. So it gave the right to any county person, one, to ask to see all the ballots, all the data information, all the voter registration, everything before voting on registration, on certification and vote tabulation. And the judges there, at least in Fulton County, which is in and around Atlanta, said, no, I don't think so. But we're going to see this repeated over and over and over again in the various battleground states. And the question is, does a misdemeanor, 90-day probation, $36,000 fine, does that do it? Well, it's better than nothing. Certainly sends the signal that attorney generals, at least in states that are where the Democrats are in control of one of the two houses of the legislature, or the attorney general, or the secretary of state, that they'll do something about it. But what's going to happen in red states with MAGA red supervisors and county officials and state officials, where right up and down the ballot is all red attorney generals, red governors, red secretaries of state, you're not going to see these people being prosecuted. They'll probably be celebrated. They'll give them a parade down Main Street. And that is the division we're seeing between law and order, right and wrong, right, red and blue in this country. And so it's okay. I'm glad that Chris Mays went after Peggy Judd and others. But it may not be enough, and it probably won't be enough. Look, the threat of losing your bar license, going to jail, didn't stop dozens of people to try to enable Donald Trump's worst instincts and his fascist tendencies back in 2020. You can count on 2 hands how many lawyers have lost their bar license or wrecked their careers because of Donald Trump trying to do his bidding. I'm not looking for sympathy or sorrow for them. I'm just commenting. You can count on many, many hands how many election or elected officials have also been indicted, threw their careers away, lost their bar license, got convicted, and the like. So there have always been existing laws in the books and ethical codes that would have prevented any self-respecting person, any intelligent person, from committing these crimes. But Donald Trump has a way about him. It's the way of a cult leader. And he gets people like Peggy Judd, who Donald Trump wouldn't care about. If she was, as I've joked before, only half in jest, if Peggy Judd was on fire in front of Trump Tower in the middle of Fifth Avenue, Donald Trump would have stopped to pee to put her out, unless he felt he could get a vote out of it. But these people don't think so. Oh, Donald Trump's my friend. Donald Trump is the second coming. Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. You can only vote once in that group. I get that base is super excited. I get that they're motivated. But so are the Democrats, so are the progressives, and so are the people that are the never Trumpers, including Republicans. They're motivated. May not see them at rallies, in the non-battleground states, but they exist. And they are, I believe there's pent up frustration and demand to vote Kamala Harris and the Democrats up and down the ticket into power. Because the only two, forget polls, they're always wrong. I mean, let's be fair. I know there's an entire multi-billion-dollar industry around polls, but they're very rarely right. They're usually wrong by any power of 1 to 4 points, depending upon your state. 1 to 4 points is a big miss in polling. It's the difference between calling Kamala Harris Madam-elect President and calling Donald Trump President again. But the only two times where we've been able to actually vote in some way, not just getting a random phone call or social media poll or something, is in donating money. That's in our control. And Kamala Harris has gotten 4 times the amount of money or so, at least 3 times the amount of money as Donald Trump, into the billions. And in special elections and midterms. So since 2022, who's been the dominant party in elections? The Democrats. Supposed to be a sea of red, bloodbath for the Democrats, and it wasn't. We picked up some seats in some key places and held the Senate. So special elections in 23 and 24, when abortion and a woman's right to choose was on the ballot, what happened? Democrats won, even in places like Alabama. So every time there's been a vote since 2020, it's all gone the Democrats' way. It's all cut to the Democrats. And then you're voting with your pocketbook. You're voting with your purse. You're voting with your cell phone by donating money to Kamala Harris or some Democratic or progressive cause around her. That's all I can say. That's why I think Kamala Harris is vastly being underpolled, and her polling strength is being underestimated in the battleground states. People think it's going to be razor thin. I mean, it could be. I think it's 50% chance that it's razor thin. I think it's 50% chance to blow out for Kamala Harris. I don't think that there's ever a chance of a blowout for Donald Trump. I think it's either razor thin or Kamala wins going away in a landslide. But in order to make that happen, you got to do something about it. Got to vote. You got to vote any way your state allows you to vote, and then vote early. Vote early so that you take your name off the roll that the Democrats are using to follow up with people to make sure they voted. Because every time they got to call somebody who already voted, they're wasting resources. Let them vote early. Let them focus on really the people that are going to only be voting on election day or the like. Or if you're going to vote early so you don't even have to be called, and wasted resources won't be expended. So then that frees you up by voting early to go volunteer with the Democratic Party, the Kamala Harris campaign, to do phone banking in other states for the courtesy of your own home. I have a good friend I met at my 40th high school reunion yesterday. Shout out to Tim Grove, who said he was motivated by Midas Touch and Legal AF and what we do here to do something. And he's doing something. He signed up, and from the comfort of his New Jersey home, he's phone banking in Georgia, which you're allowed to do. You don't have to be registered to vote in order to knock on doors and do phone banking in other states. You don't. Even to register people, you don't. Register people to vote. You have to be, in general, you have to be registered to vote in that state in order to be inside a precinct, inside where voting happens. Outside, First Amendment. Outside, First Amendment. Phone banking, First Amendment. Knocking on door, First Amendment. Exercise your First Amendment right. Use that to help get Kamala Harris elected. She needs your help. It was a short track election, even though we're all amazed by what she's been able to accomplish in the short amount of time. She needs your help. So do we. Free subscribe to the Midas Touch Network, and help us get to 250,000 before Election Day. So until my next hot take, until my next legal laugh, I'm Michael Popok, and I'm recording. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.